Hi, Sally Ann with you. Have you ever started eating well and then a few days later you feel like you've failed? You know that pattern, you feel motivated, you try to do everything right, and then life happens. There's stress, a busy day, or something doesn't go to plan, and suddenly it feels like you've slipped and, dare I say it, failed again. And that's why that slip turns into guilt, and you often giving up and telling yourself you'll start again on Monday. If this sounds familiar, you are definitely not alone. And more importantly, it's not a personal failure. This episode is part of World Health Day 2026 with the theme of Together for Health, Stand with Science. So today I want to explore what science actually says about creating healthier eating habits that last without stress, without fear of failure, and without relying on diets. Let's imagine that you have asked me this: why do I keep failing at healthy eating? Eating behaviours are influenced by so many different factors. It's not just about the knowledge you have or what you believe you should be doing. In my work, I talk about 4 key areas or drivers for eating. There's a biological side, and that's about recognising our hunger, satiety, fullness cues. It's about our overall health. It's about our hormones, and especially the many transitions that women's hormones go through in their life, such as pregnancy, lactation, and menopause. There's also the psychological driver for eating, and these are your thoughts and beliefs about food, but also perfectionism around eating and emotional eating habits. Then the diet culture, or dietology as I call it, or the rules, regulations, restrictions, and messages about good and bad food. And we have all grown up with these. And then there's your social and environmental driver. We lead busy lives, we have families, we have habits, we have commitments, we want convenient food, we want our food to perhaps reflect our personal values, and we want to eat for pleasure. And that is not taboo. I want everyone to eat for pleasure, but not at the cost of their health or happiness. So when you start looking at eating in this way, it's not surprising that choosing food feels complicated. And the science supports this. Behaviour change isn't simply eat less and move more. If that was the case, we wouldn't be stuck in this drive to always want to eat healthier. So instead of blaming yourself, we need to start understanding what's really driving your eating. And this partially answers another question you might want to ask me. Why do diets work at first, but then I can't stick to them? Diets are built on all or nothing thinking. A client of mine, Anita, described them this way. She said, they promise you freedom. They give you the rules and regulations to follow. All you have to do is eat as they say. But then as soon as you have a slip up, as soon as you can't stick to one of those rules, you feel like you've failed, and all of a sudden you believe you're not capable of healthy eating anymore. Diets also override your natural hunger and satiety signals sometimes. They also ignore those psychological reasons for eating, and some of the rules just don't fit in with your social life as well. So there's an understanding in science that this restriction then leads to cravings, because we've created a disconnection between what our mind and body want from food and what we're actually giving them. So in earlier episodes, I have dug much deeper into the reasons why diets don't work, and you're most welcome to listen to those earlier episodes. But what I want to emphasize today, as I always do, it's not about you, it's about the method that isn't sustainable. And now I know you're dying to ask, what actually works? Now, I could talk about this all day. Yes, there's lots of things to say about how to sustain healthier eating for the longer term, but I'm just going to focus on 3 really important aspects of how we sustain healthier eating. The first step is starting small and making it sustainable. It's focusing on something that you can repeat, that is going to make a difference and actually help you believe that change is possible long term. Let me share a quick example of what this can look like in real life. I was working with a woman in her mid-40s. Yes, she had a full-time job, she had family commitments as well, and she had spent years trying to get back on track. Every Monday, she started with a new plan and the commitment, whether it was to cut out sugar, to eat perfectly. Dare I say, I don't believe there is a perfect way of eating, but this lady certainly was striving to achieve that. And for her, it was about being strict. You know, if she wasn't going to eat carbs, she wouldn't eat carbs. If she was going to eat protein at every meal, then that's what she was aiming to do. She would start really confidently, it would stick for a few days, but then life would happen again. Work got busy, she was tired, something stressful came up, and everything would fall apart. So when we met, she'd tell me, look, Sally-Ann, I just can't stick to anything. I really don't know if you can help me. But the truth was, it wasn't her, it was the approach, because everything she was trying to do required a lot of effort and a lot of time for her to succeed. So instead of another big overhaul, we did something quite different. We focused on one very small habit. I asked her to pause before she ate and simply ask herself, am I hungry? Or is something else going on for me? And this was it. No food rules, no cutting things out, no starting again. And for her at first, it just seemed a little bit too simple. Was this really going to work? But to her credit, and of course with my encouragement, she stuck with it and things started to shift. She became aware that she had been eating out of stress, out of habit, and we started looking at how she could respond to those situations differently. We then started adding in some nutrition guidance so we could make sure that what she was having for lunch would actually sustain her for the entire afternoon. A few weeks later, she excitedly shared with me, Sally-Ann, this is the first time I've been able to stick to healthier eating without having to put so much effort into it and that dreaded feeling of starting from scratch over and over again. And that's the difference we get. It wasn't a dramatic overnight transformation. It was something much more powerful because it was sustainable. That small change and what it uncovered allowed us to choose things that she could fit into her life. But more importantly, the things that she was changing was building her confidence. And this is what has allowed her to trust herself with food again. Sustainable habits are not built on trying to do too many things at once. They're about starting with something that's important to you that's going to make a big difference over time. And what I often find when I'm talking with ladies in our free mindful eating strategy calls is that they've been trying to do too much, and I'm actually going to work with them to do less. The next step, or the big part of sustaining change long term, is building awareness. And what this does is actually gives you the answer to how do I know what my body actually needs. Because up until now, you've probably been following someone else's rules. You would have had food rules when you were growing up as a child and a teenager, and then all of the diet rules you may have absorbed along the way. So for the first time, you actually get the opportunity, with support, to know what is going to work for you. And mindful eating is one scientifically backed way to do this. And what the science shows is that mindful eating helps you to tune in to your body. It helps you to slow down. And when you slow down, your body has time to register when you're satiated. So instead of eating past that point of comfort, you're more likely to notice, I've had enough. That's enough for me. And in simple terms, you're listening to your body again instead of overriding those internal cues that have always been there for you, but you haven't known how to use them wisely. Mindful eating also helps us to respond to our emotions differently. Bronwyn, another client of mine who has also shared part of her journey in a podcast episode, said that she has learned to sit with her big emotions. So what that means is that you actually notice what you're feeling. Is it stress? Is it boredom, frustration, sadness? What is it that is making you want to reach for food? What mindfulness does is create a small pause so you get the choice. Rather than automatically reaching for food, you can do something else to soothe your emotions. And over time, the research shows that this practice of pausing reduces emotional eating habits because you're learning to cope and manage your emotions in different ways. What mindfulness shows us is that a lot of eating happens on autopilot. We often finish a packet of potato crisps because there's just a few left, or we eat the food because it's there, it smells good, it looks good, but we're not actually hungry. Mindfulness helps you notice those moments. So instead of eating just because the food's there, you can ask yourself, is this what I actually want right now? And what's interesting but not surprising is that brain studies show that mindfulness increases our awareness of what's happening in our bodies, why we feel like eating, but it also helps calm the emotional part of the brain. The third important part of a mindfulness-based approach to eating is that it helps us change how we respond to our food choices. And what I'm really talking about here is self-compassion. Because when I first start talking to ladies about moving from some sort of diet plan or restrictive way of eating to mindful eating, they're really concerned that they're going to eat too much with no food rules. You know, the cupboard doors, the refrigerator doors are going to be opened and I won't be able to stop. But it's a really good question. What if I do overeat sometimes? So I'm going to share what a real life example of this looks like. Imagine you love chocolate and you're sitting down with a block of chocolate in the afternoon. You open up the block and you're just going to eat a couple of pieces. But before you know it, you've eaten an amount of chocolate that just doesn't feel comfortable in your stomach. You feel a little bit unwell. You feel like you've just eaten a little bit too much. Now, when we get to this point, it can go two ways. Without self-compassion, some really harsh and negative thoughts quickly come in. Why did I do that? How did I let myself lose control? I've blown it now. I may as well give up. And this cycle continues. There's more eating, there's more guilt, there's more promises to be better tomorrow. But when we introduce self-compassion, something different happens. You'll pause. You'll notice your body and say, I'm feeling quite full. I'm a bit uncomfortable now. But instead of criticizing yourself, you'll say, look, I don't feel great, but that's okay. I'm human. And then you can step into curiosity. So what was going on for me just now? Why was it that I ate that amount of chocolate? Was I hungry, or was I tired or stressed, or just needing a moment? There's no blame with self-compassion, no punishment, no need to restrict later. You don't stop eating because you feel like you should stop eating. You feel that you've had enough, and that's enough to encourage you to stop eating. You might take a breath, have a glass of water, or simply sit with that awareness. But once this chocolate or overeating chocolate situation has passed, it's gone. There's no reflecting on it tomorrow. There's no spiraling. There's a small amount of learning. So when you go to eat chocolate next time, perhaps rather than taking the whole block with you, you'll break off a couple of squares, knowing that you can eat those mindfully and go back if you want some more. You just look at ways of supporting yourself without restrictive rules, but with kindness and compassion. And this is the shift. It's not about getting everything perfect with food. It's about how you respond when things don't go to plan. Because when you respond with compassion instead of criticism, you stay connected, you stay consistent, and that's what helps you build confidence to have healthier eating habits that last. And what the science shows is that lasting change doesn't come from control, it comes from awareness, small steps, and how you respond along the way. Another question you might want to ask me about setting up healthier eating that lasts is one I get commonly from my clients. And that is, how do I stop feeling like I've blown it? A really simple part of mindfulness is letting go of the rules, and a practical place to start is removing the good and bad food labels, because it's those labels that often drive that cycle of feeling that you succeeded or failed. And let me give you an example. When I was working with Judy, a client of mine who has shared on this podcast as well, Judy came to me with lots of strong rules around food, which is not uncommon. Cake was bad. Healthy eating meant that she was being good. So if she ate a piece of cake, she soon realized that her immediate thought was, I've blown it. This was a really big insight for her, because she realized that her labeling eating cake as blown it meant that she felt like she had failed. And this would then trigger her to think, well, since I've blown it, I may as well eat more cake. In fact, if I eat the whole cake, I'll remove the temptation for tomorrow. But of course, tomorrow was not necessarily the next day. It could be a week away or a month away before she would commit to healthier eating. So when she realized this with mindful eating, she realized that by removing the labels of good and bad of foods, that cake was no longer bad, it was just cake, it changed everything for her. Because if she chose to eat a piece of cake, it didn't mean she'd failed, it was just a choice. So instead of reacting with guilt, she just paused and reflected, like she would after every other food choice. How did it feel? Did I enjoy it? Is one piece enough? Am I satisfied? Or do I want some more? And more often than not, when she inquired, she found that what she had chosen was just right for her. No spiraling out of control, no inner thoughts or sayings of I've blown it, and no need to start again on Monday. And it's really important, what my clients find, including Judy, is that just focusing on these small changes and seeing that you're making progress, it's not about perfection anymore. It's about sustaining the little changes that you're making each day. And it's building awareness, learning from your experiences, and responding in a way that helps you keep at it and moving forward. So another question I get asked as well, and it's similar to the one from Judy, it is, how do I stop feeling like a failure with food? And so many women that I speak to feel like they have failed with food. And for many of them, it's an area of their life that they have spent so much time trying to improve. They've shed so many tears, they've had so many frustrating moments, and they just really do feel crippled by food and not being able to stick to healthier eating. But how about we started shifting how we reflect on our food choices? If we could say that there is no failure, there's only feedback. And the feedback comes from you, from that compassionate you. Because as I've shared so far in today's episode, every eating occasion is an insight into our reasons or drivers for eating. Something to understand, not something to ignore, not something to judge, but something to become curious about. Curiosity is such an important part of living and eating mindfully. So instead of thinking, why did I do that? I've just got no control. You might gently inquire, what's going on? What did I need from that experience? Or did that experience actually give me what I needed? Can you see the difference in that? Because the old way shuts you down. It just sort of says, you're no good, you can't do anything, you've got no control. Whereas when we become curious, we're inquiring, why is it that that occurred? What could I do differently? It opens you up to other opportunities and it builds your confidence, because each time you will be trusting yourself to try something new until you find what works for you. So again, I just want to say there's no one perfect way of eating, and you certainly don't go there by controlling food. You go there from being aware and understanding your reasons for eating. It's about connecting with those drivers for eating and observing them. Until we do that, we can't actually transform our habits long term, because it is through this process that you will build confidence and trust in your food choices, not through rules or restriction. It is definitely that awareness, curiosity, and self-compassion. So when you can replace judgment with curiosity, eating truly becomes a place of learning, not failure. If you've been listening along and thinking, wow, maybe this is worth trying, where should I start? One of the first things I often suggest is to simply eat without distraction. Actually, simply is perhaps not the right word to use there, because when we actually do go to sit and eat without distraction, we realize that there's a lot of things that we do or think about when we're eating. So I'm not asking you to do this perfectly. I'm asking you to create a few moments in your day when you're eating to actually just sit and eat and not do anything else. Sometimes I encourage people to even just take the first 3 mouthfuls of a meal without distraction. So you're being present with the eating occasion. You get to taste your food and really start tuning into your body and listening to what it wants and needs. It is only by eating without distraction and eating with awareness that we can understand what is driving our eating. And then once we know that, we can put the right strategies in place to set up healthier eating in a way that's backed by science and is going to be practical for you to sustain. So as we recognise World Health Day, the message is ask, share, stand with science. And this can start with you. Continue to ask questions about your health and approach those questions with curiosity. And if you're asking questions of your healthcare practitioners, ask them to give you what the science says, as well as what happens in real life, because that is a big part of what healthcare practitioners do. We are trained to help you take the science and make it practical and personalised to you in your own life. The other thing I want to say about the science when it comes to our eating habits, it's clear. Sustainable eating isn't built on extreme or rigid rules. It's built on awareness, flexibility, and compassion. So instead of being hard on yourself, start getting curious, because that's where real lasting change begins. And while there's so much we can learn from the science, putting it into practice can feel a little unclear at times. And that could be because there's conflicting messages out there. I get that. Nutrition is bombarded by new insights, new information. And that's why I said before, it's important to work with a healthcare practitioner to help you sift through that science and put together a personalised plan for you. The other thing is that your eating is influenced by your body, your experiences, and your habits. So finding a way of eating that truly works for you really does have to be a personalised process. And again, a qualified healthcare practitioner can help you interpret all of that scientific information and put together something that is really practical and sustainable for you. And if you have any questions about your eating habits right now, then you're most welcome to email or message me. My contact links are included with this episode's notes. And if you know that you do need some help to set up that personalised way of eating that's backed by science, practical, so you can stick to it, then book in for a free mindful eating strategy call with me. The link to my calendar has been provided with this episode's notes. So what the science shows is that healthy eating that lasts comes from awareness, not control. Thanks for joining in today. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please share it on your social media pages. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, so you don't miss out on future episodes. I look forward to sharing with you again next week.